Hello everyone, and welcome to this Diablo 3 dungeon guide for the Demon Hunter Unhallowed Essence Set. We'll be going over how to set up your character, and I'll also explain how to complete both primary dungeon objectives. Keep watching until the end to see a full playthrough of the entire set dungeon with additional tips. To get started, let's first take a look at the set bonuses so we'll know how to gear out our character. This set is pretty basic. The main thing you need to know is that the 6-piece set bonus buffs damage of the multi-shot skill based on the amount of discipline you have. In our setup, we'll be focusing on obtaining enough damage to be able to kill all monsters with one hit, so we'll be looking for gear pieces that further buff multi-shot's damage. This dungeon is very large, and you won't have a lot of time to stand still and shoot and still be able to clear the entire dungeon within the time limit. Since we'll be able to one-shot all the monsters, we will not be needing to take a resource generator skill and won't benefit from the 2-piece set bonus. The 4-piece set bonus provides some inherent damage and damage reduction increases that we will naturally leverage without any effort. Therefore, increased maximum discipline and movement speed will be the key focus areas for the gearing and skills setup. In this setup, we are using 5 of the 6 set pieces in the helm, shoulders, torso, hands, and leg slots. In the main hand and offhand slots, we have Yang's Recurve and Dead Man's Legacy, which both buff the damage of multi-shot. With these 2 pieces equipped, along with the 6-piece set bonus, you should be able to one-shot all the monsters in the dungeon. Once you get to that point, any extra damage stats you obtain becomes trivial, so the remaining items can be dedicated to defense and mobility. In the feet slot, we have Illusory Boots, which will allow us to move freely through monsters. These boots are helpful for this dungeon since some grouping is required for one of the primary dungeon objectives, and there can be high density and small passageways, making it tough to maneuver. In the wrist slot, we have Warzetchian Arm Guards, giving us some run speed increase. In the waist slot, we have String of Ears for reduced enemy melee damage, useful when grouping up the high density monster packs. In the neck slot, in one of the finger slots, we have set pieces, the Traveler's Pledge, and the Compass Rose, which provide damage reduction when moving. You'll never be standing still for very long, so you should be able to leverage this bonus from the set most of the time. In the second finger slot, we have Elusive Ring, which gives a large boost to damage reduction. When it comes to rerolling stats on the gear, the top priority is Maximum Discipline to increase the damage multiplier from the 6-piece set bonus. The next priority is to take enough damage stats, such as critical hit damage, to be able to one-shot monsters in the dungeon. Then, take anything that boosts survivability. For Kni's Cube in the weapon slot, there aren't many helpful items. We take Ingium to help with cooldown reduction on Companion, but if your damage is high enough to where you are one-shotting monsters, you shouldn't be consuming much hatred and won't need to cast Companion at all. But this can still help ensure you're above 90% resource for the next item. In the armor slot, we take Aquila Cuirass, which provides a huge increase to toughness. And in the jewelry slot, we have Ring of the Royal Grandeur to give us the 6-piece set bonus with only 5 of the pieces equipped on our character. If you don't have the ring for the cube, then you can wear all 6 set pieces and either cube the illusory boots or don't equip them all together. You will have movement abilities, mainly Vault, that will allow you to move through monsters. For gems, we have an Amethyst in the head slot for additional toughness, Emeralds in the torso and leg slots, and an Emerald in the weapon slot. For legendary gems, we mainly focus on survivability with Bane of the Powerful, Mutilation Guard, and Molten Wildebeest Gizzard. For Paragon, the main priorities are movement speed, maximum hatred, life regeneration, and resource cost reduction. Next, let's go over the skills. We'll be using Multi-Shot with the full Broadside rune, which is the main damage dealing skill and focal point for the set. We'll also take Vault with the Tumble rune, which we will use frequently when trying to group up enemies. Next, we have Preparation, which will be used on demand to refill discipline as needed. We take the Invigoration rune with increased maximum discipline to increase our damage output with the set bonus. Next, we have Companion with the Bat Companion rune for hatred generation, and then we have Smokescreen with the Vanishing Powder rune, and Shadow Power with the Shadow Glide rune for increased movement speed. For the passive skills, we have Tactical Advantage for additional movement speed, then we have Ambush and Archery for increased damage, and lastly, Perfectionist for reduced discipline costs and additional toughness. Now, let's go over the dungeon objectives. The first primary objective is to hit 20 enemies with a single multi-shot 6 times. Luckily, the multi-shot skill can cover a large area. Unfortunately, the monsters in this dungeon will quickly abandon pursuing you if you get too far from them, making it very difficult to actively group monsters up together. In order to accomplish this objective reliably, you're going to need to first train your eyes to recognize what groups and density of monsters equates to a grouping of 20 plus enemies. Throughout the dungeon, there are mainly packs of smaller spiderlings or larger spiders. Each pack of spiderlings contains about 15 of them. Here's several examples of what these packs look like. Note the approximate visual size and density of these groups. The Spiderlings are the ideal packs to try to incorporate into a 20 plus enemy multi-shot cast. Each pack of larger spiders contains about 10 of them. Here's several examples of what these packs look like. Also note the approximate visual size and density of these groups. Due to their larger size and lower density, spiders are tougher to group up and hit with a single multi-shot cast. The larger spider packs can be deceptive because each one takes up so much more space compared to the smaller spiderlings. You'll want to find a spot that contains a combination of 2 of these types of packs next to each other. The combination possibilities are 1 spiderling pack plus 1 spider pack, or 2 spiderling packs, or 2 spider packs. The most ideal combination is 1 pack of spiderlings with 1 pack of spiders. This grouping is the most straightforward visually since it's very easy to identify that you have 2 different monster types together. And since this combination of packs will consist of about 25 total monsters, 15 from the spiderlings and 10 from the spiders, these groups will generally reward you with 20 to 25 kills in a single multi-shot cast if you are positioned correctly. This helps ensure you don't kill too many monsters at once and potentially rob enemies from the next grouping attempt. The second most ideal combination is 2 packs of spiderlings. Since this combination of packs will consist of about 30 total monsters, 15 from each spiderling pack, you will easily be rewarded with a 20 plus enemy multi-shot cast. The main challenge is learning to visually identify the correct density that indicates you have 2 of these packs together instead of only 1 or possibly more than 2. Due to their small size, it is very easy to hit an excessive number of monsters in one shot. If you recognize the density of 2 spiderling packs combined, then go for the shot right away. Don't waste any time trying to group up more because you will have plenty for one multi-shot cast. If you kill more, you may be robbing the monster count from your next grouping. The third most ideal combination is 2 packs of spiders. Since this combination of packs will consist of right at about 20 total monsters, 10 from each spider pack, it is very difficult to get at least 20 total hits from a single multi-shot cast. Combine this low number with the inability to group them up tightly due to their size and the numerous small passageways in the dungeon, and you can see why attempting one of these shots may not result in 20 total hits. Therefore, ideally, each of your 20 enemy groupings will contain at least 1 pack of spiderlings. While you will inevitably need to do a little coaxing together of 2 packs of monsters, you won't need to actively group up loose, random monsters in tight groupings. To help identify the packs, it is recommended to first run into a room past several monsters to see what you are working with. If you see 2 distinct packs, then coax them together and position yourself such that you are firing at only that grouping, so you won't hit another pack that may be nearby. The best approach is to run past the monsters and then turn around to shoot them. That way, you won't have errant arrows flying into the next upcoming pack. You particularly want to shoot in this fashion if you are just trying to kill 1 or 2 enemies off before getting into the next area. The second primary dungeon objective is to never drop below 50% discipline. The toughest thing about this objective is just losing sight of your discipline level. When you need increased movement speed, you'll want to use Smokescreen on cooldown since it has no discipline cost. When Smokescreen is on cooldown and you have a large distance to traverse, then use Shadow Power, but do it sparingly. Try to alternate between the two, Smokescreen and Shadow Power, when moving from area to area. Make sure you wait a couple of seconds after each one to leverage the Tactical Advantage passive skill. You'll want to save Vault for when you're actively trying to group up enemies together, since it will let you travel through the monsters. This is particularly important if you do not have the illusory boots equipped. You generally don't want to use Vault when traveling from area to area, since it can really drain your discipline. Since Vault and Shadow Power don't have cooldowns, you can easily overdo it and drop below the 50% mark if you spam them too much. And of course, remember, to help counter the discipline drain from these skills, use Preparation frequently to get a refill. Next, let's take a look at the dungeon map. I've broken the map up into 4 segments. During each segment, there are some spots where you will need to backtrack slightly to ensure you've cleared all enemies. You want to make sure you clear everything as you go. Taking a couple extra seconds in each area is better than running around in a panic at the end of the dungeon trying to locate that one remaining monster. This map is too big to cover the whole thing twice during one attempt. Segments 1, 2, and 3 each end with a large area where you are likely to get at least 1 or 2 20 enemy multi-shot casts. There are 4 main locations where you should look to perform a successful 20 enemy multi-shot cast or 2. These areas are the best locations because there's lots of room to circle around monsters and coax them to group up without you being hit too much. Trying to group these monsters in the narrow passageways can be very difficult and you might waste valuable seconds off the timer. Other than these large areas, there are also a few medium-sized areas where you should look to perform 20 enemy multi-shot casts. These spots, where pathways converge, have a little room to work with and are the next easiest locations to coax the monsters together. Beyond these designated locations, you may find an appropriate size grouping anywhere in the dungeon. Monster placement for each dungeon attempt will be unique. That's why it's so important to learn to recognize what groups of monsters will get you 20 plus kills, as discussed in the dungeon objectives section of this guide. If you think you see a 20 plus enemy grouping in a narrow passageway, take the best shot you can, and if you get it, great. If not, move on. Don't waste precious seconds trying to coax up monsters that probably won't group up in these narrow pathways. Here's some examples of what it looks like to have monster packs in these thin pathways. Combined with the monster's disinterest in following you around, it can be frustrating to try to get an appropriate sized group together. Not to mention, the more time you spend trying to coax monsters together, the more hits you will take, and the more likely you might die, failing the dungeon and wasting your attempt. So now that you have the setup and you know how to approach the dungeon, let's head to it. Go to Act 2, then to the Howling Plateau waypoint. From there, head southwest. You'll pass through an opening on a barricaded wall. The dungeon entrance is just to the east, next to a broken cart. And next, we'll look at the playthrough. For this run, I went with pretty bare bones gear to demonstrate techniques. In addition to the 6-piece set gear, I had to equip the bow, Yang's Recurve, and quiver, Deadman's Legacy, to be able to one-shot all the monsters. Any additional items or stats that you get, consistent with the recommendations earlier, will give you a much easier time completing the dungeon. Once inside the dungeon, don't waste any time. Cast your run speed buffs and get going. Here's a single Spiderling pack that will only contain about 15. There's no other pack nearby, so burn it down and move on. A single elite, kill it, and move on. We might have been able to group up that pack of spiders we just killed with these Spiderlings, but they were just too far apart in this narrow passageway. It's best just to kill them and move to a more open area where it will be easier to group. Here's the first large area at the end of segment number 1. You can tell by the density here that there are 2 packs of Spiderlings. Back up and shoot them for group number 1 of 6. And let's see if we can squeeze another group out of this area. Another 2 packs of Spiderlings. Coax them together, and there's group number 2 of 6. Clear out the remaining enemies and start segment number 2. A Spiderling pack, spiders, and more Spiderlings. And there was group number 3 of 6. In these narrow passageways, don't bother trying to coax monsters together because it's too difficult. If you see 2 groups next to each other, line up your best shot and take it. If you get it, great. Use your speed buffs liberally when there's no enemies. And here's the large area at the end of segment 2, and there's group number 4 of 6. You could tell from the density that there were 2 packs of Spiderlings there. No need for grouping, just position yourself and take the shot. Here's another Spiderling group. We'll try to coax it into the residual enemies from the previous shot. And we got group number 5 of 6. Knowing there are approximately 15 Spiderlings in a single pack, it's easy to count up 5 additional residual enemies and include them in a shot. We got 2 groups out of this area. Clear it out and move on. Just take out any small groups that you see isolated. Here's a pack of spiders and a pack of Spiderlings. Position and shoot. And the first primary dungeon objective is complete. Here's the first large area of segment number 3. 2 groups of spiders. If we needed another 20 enemy group for the objective, we might have been able to coax them together. Here's the second large area of segment number 3. We probably could have coaxed together another 20 enemy group out of that area, but it would have taken a bit of time and it would have been tough. That's why it's important to be disciplined in the beginning of the dungeon and not kill a lot more than you need for each group. It can be easy to overdo it. And now, here in segment number 4, we're just focused on clearing the rest of the dungeon without dropping discipline below 50%. Always be thorough. You don't want to have to run back through the entire dungeon again, searching for monsters you missed on the first pass. Also, make sure you don't have a follower assigned in this dungeon. They can end up doing more harm than good. And we're done. Good luck trying to finish this one. If you enjoyed the guide and would like to see more content, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.